I didn't go out looking for legends. I wasn't one of those ghost hunters or urban explorers. I just needed to drive, to disappear for a little while. I'd been staying with my cousin in Northern Virginia after a rough winter. Burnout, maybe grief. I don't even remember the reason anymore. But I do remember the road, and the moment that I crossed under that bridge. Everything changed after that. It was a Tuesday, early October. Cool enough for a hoodie, but not yet cold. Kind of evening where the air feels clean and empty. I was driving without GPS. I like getting lost. It's one of the only times my brain goes quiet. Around 9 p.m., I realized that I hadn't passed another car in at least 20 minutes. Just trees. Black silhouettes against the navy sky. No streetlights, no houses. And then I saw the tunnel. A tight one-lane stone overpass set into a small hill. The kind of structure that the world forgets about once they build highways. There was a sign nailed to a rotten post that had been spray painted so many times that I couldn't even read it. I slowed down, headlights cutting into the tunnel. That's when the static started. The radio, which I hadn't touched in over an hour, hissed out of nowhere. Not music, not voices. Just a sharp clicking burst of static, like something spitting from the speakers. I tapped the knob. Silence. And then the engine lights blinked once. And then everything died. No lights, no music, no engine. Just the sudden hush of something very wrong. I coasted the car forward until it stopped under the bridge, half in, half out. Suddenly, my chest felt heavy, and it was hard to breathe. Thick, like humidity, but it wasn't hot. Maybe anxiety or panic, I guess. I stepped out convinced it was just a battery issue. I popped the hood and leaned forward. That's when I noticed the smell. Of iron, wet fur, and something burned. And then I heard it, a metal tapping. One sharp tap. Pause. Another. It was coming from the far side of the bridge, just beyond the reach of my headlights. I stood still, one hand on the hood, and that's when I saw the rabbit. Not running, not alive. Dead. It had been nailed to the base of a tree, skinned plumb clean, spikes even driven through the paws. Its head was hanging loose, like someone even wanted it to look down. And beside it, in the dirt, was a pile of tiny bones, arranged in a circle. I took one slow step back, the kind where your body moves before your brain catches up. And that's when I saw him. He stepped out from the trees like he had been waiting for me to notice him. The stories say it's a costume, some guy in a bunny suit with a hatchet. What I saw didn't feel like a man at all. He was tall, but slouched. Pale fabric hung from his shoulders like something once white, left out in the rain for years. And his head? It wasn't a mask. It was a hood hand-stitched from burlap, with long, stiff ears stuffed with something to keep them upright. The face had no features, just two burned-out eye holes. And he held something in his hand, not a hatchet, but a ball-peen hammer. Heavy, dark with use. He didn't speak, he didn't move toward me, thank God. He just tilted his head, once, slowly. And then he raised the hammer, not to swing, but to point at the tunnel behind me. I turned to look. Inside the tunnel, carved into the concrete wall, were dozens of tiny rabbit shapes. Etched, clawed, overlapping, all of them facing inward. And that's when I heard it. Something was scratching against the concrete from inside the tunnel. Not footsteps, not claws, but something dragging. And this scared the hell out of me. I sprinted into the car, heart pounding way too fast, and I fumbled for the keys and almost dropped them. Once inside the car, I quickly hit the door lock buttons just to feel a little more security, I guess. I tried the ignition, but no power. I was freaking out. I had to calm down or I wasn't going to make it out of there. And then I looked, which I shouldn't have, but was relieved when I saw the bunny man had not moved. He was still standing by the tree and still pointing. Creepy. I could feel something else behind me now, inside the tunnel. And that's when, thank God, the car dashboard flickered. Once. Twice. The engine finally turned over with a cough. But my hands were shaking so badly that I nearly broke the key off. And then I was so scared, I about cried, trying to calm myself just enough so I could shift. And as I finally pulled out, I looked into the mirror. He was walking backwards into the woods, but still facing me, and still holding the hammer at his side, like it was just part of him. I drove at least 40 minutes without stopping. I didn't look at my phone, and I finally just remembered to breathe. And then, of course, I just started bawling. A release, I guess. I just needed to collect myself and register what I saw. Weeks later, I went looking. No, not there. I was never, ever going back there. You couldn't pay me. But I mean, look into what I saw, do some research for proof that I hadn't hallucinated this. I found a scanned newspaper article from October of 1970, Fairfax County. A man in a rabbit suit had reportedly thrown a hatchet through a couple's windshield on Guinea Road. And 10 days later, another man, same description, was seen chopping at someone's porch, yelling about trespassing. The police investigated, but they never caught anyone. One of the original articles called him the Bunny Man. People treat the story like a Halloween gimmick. They don't talk about the rabbits, the scratching, the silence under the bridge that feels like it's listening back. Like I said, I never went back there, and I didn't have to. But I saw him. Every time I closed my eyes, for months at least. And even sometimes when I drive late at night, I start having this anxiety attack. Was he hiding in the shadows ready to jump out? Or was I just driving in the wrong place at the wrong time when I saw him? All I know is I just hope that I never, ever see him again.
Have you ever walked into a moment that just feels wrong before anything even happens? Not scary, not dangerous, just off. Like something shifted in the air and you're the only one that noticed it. That's how that night started. It was the fall of 2019. I had left rural Virginia behind years ago. Not on bad terms, though. It was just that way of life didn't suit me. Too boring, I guess. But now I suddenly found myself back there for my uncle's funeral. We weren't close, but I ended up going anyway. I kind of felt obligated, family stuff and all that. Family members offered me a place to stay, but I opted for an Airbnb instead, right outside Clifton. Close enough to be involved, yet far enough to make an escape if family ever got too overwhelming. It seemed like the perfect getaway. It was out on a little gravel road that didn't even show up on a map unless you zoomed all the way in. It was a quaint little cabin of sorts, nestled at the back of a property behind an old log cabin. Other than the old log cabin that was empty, there wasn't another structure in sight. The place was completely surrounded by woods and super quiet. Peaceful, actually. I had forgotten what silence really sounded like. I guess if you live in the city too long, you just get used to all the noise. Speaking of, I didn't sleep too well on that trip. You know how it is. Strange bed in a strange place and all. Plus, it was way too quiet and super dark. You just don't realize how much ambient light there really is in the city. It wasn't that I was scared though, not even unsettled. It was just weird. I tossed and turned all that first night. Oh well, I'd be tired the next day, but that would help me finally get some sleep the next night. Or so I thought. But the next night it was more of the same. How was I ever used to that as a kid? Of course, that set my mind racing through memories, calculating how much my internal clock and senses had changed since going off to college, then never looking back after graduation, so on and so on. At that point, I had relived my entire life in my mind and decided to just give up on sleeping. It had to be almost morning by now, but when I checked the time, I'd barely been laying there for over an hour. I accepted defeat and decided to go for a walk instead, hoping it would give my mind something to focus on. It seemed to work back home, and that was just a treadmill. I didn't have a flashlight, but the one on my phone did just fine. And no, this isn't that kind of story. I made sure to check the battery level first. I walked along the gravel road for a ways, enjoying the crisp, clean air. Then I noticed something I hadn't noticed since being here. There was a break in the wooden fence beside the road, and a trail on the other side that led off into the forest. At least I thought it was a trail. Maybe just a deer trail, or even a long-forgotten service road. The remnants of one anyway. It was mostly overgrown, but still wide enough to be noticed, even in the dark. I found myself staring down that trail longer than I probably should have. It wasn't just a passing glance. The path held my attention. There was nothing about the look of it, though. It was almost like it wanted me to walk down it. And like a dummy, I did. After about a 10-minute hike down the path, it opened up into a clearing. Clearly it was man-made. Maybe an old quarry or a gravel pit, sitting in almost a perfect circle of trees. And in the middle of the clearing, a chair. A plain old wooden chair, facing away from me. No other furniture, no structures, nothing. Just that old chair. And that's when I felt it. That warning deep down in your gut that something just isn't right. You know the feeling. The kind that makes your skin go cold before your mind can even catch up as to what's happening. I didn't listen to it though. Curiosity maybe? The need to know? Pure stupidity? Who knows? Either way, I took a step forward, intending to see if anything was on the ground around that old chair. But I froze in my tracks when the chair moved. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but that wasn't it. It really did move, and was still moving. It didn't fall. It didn't get pushed. It turned, or was turning, real slow, like someone unseen had been sitting in it, waiting for me to show up. The chair stopped turning when it faced me directly. Still, there was no one in it, but when the chair stopped, I heard it, breathing, a heavy breathing, but not loud, more strained sounding. I wish I could say it was coming from the chair, but I really couldn't tell. It seemed to be coming from all around me, from the forest itself, twisting and traveling on the breeze. But as unnerving as that was, my ears focused on another sound. One just beneath the sound of the breathing. It was a weird clicking sound, but metallic, like scissors opening and closing, but bigger than scissors. And this sound, I could tell the direction it was coming from. Across the clearing, directly on the other side of the old chair, something stepped out of the woodline. It didn't rush at me, and it didn't make a sound. It just stepped out and stood there. Almost like it wanted to be seen, like it belonged there. Before my mind could finish the thought that it was someone in a costume, my gut interrupted it. It was too tall, way taller than any person could have been. The thing was solid white, but dirty and matted, almost like it had been dragged through the woods for miles. And even though my gut knew this was no costume, its face had the feeling and the look of a mask. Not some cheap plastic Halloween mask, though. It was rigid and hard-looking. Ceramic or porcelain, maybe. It had tall, solid ears, a lot like a rabbit, although one was broken off about midways down. One of the eyes was pitch black and empty, with a scar-like crack running down through it. But the other, it had something in it. Maybe glass, I'm not sure. But all I know is even at that distance, I could see the faint reflection of myself in that eye. The thing carried something, though, that made my blood run cold. It looked like large hedge clippers, but older. Handmade, maybe. The handles were wrapped in a combination of duct tape and what looked like fur, and I knew without the thing making any movement that those clippers were the sound that I was hearing just seconds ago. I wanted to run, but again, it was one of those situations where my mind hadn't caught up to what was going on yet. I did manage to stumble back a step, and the thing on the other side of the clearing stepped forward. It didn't run. It didn't take more than one step. It just seemed to move forward as I moved back. Again, I eased away, and the thing matched my movements. I got the feeling that it was toying with me, like it wanted me to see it, but really see it. There was something about seeing the image of myself in its one good, oversized eye that had me transfixed. But one slight movement of the thing broke any hypnotic spell that it may had over me. The clipper-like things it held were slowly raised, and I can swear, even in the dark, I saw something thick and wet ooze down those blades. I turned and ran, thinking it was now or never. I tore back down the path as fast as I could, ignoring the swatting and slashing branches in my face. I never looked back. This time, I was scared. I ran and ran until the roadway appeared up ahead, and even then, I didn't stop. I ran full force all the way back to my cabin and locked myself inside. I rummaged through the kitchen until I found the biggest knife I could, the only weapon on hand at the time, and backed against the wall, staring out the window across the room from me. I stayed that way all night, never letting my guard down. But nothing ever came out of the darkness. I was still shaking with fear and adrenaline when the rising sun peeked through the window, although it was still a few hours after that before I would even calm down and think about moving. I finally got up the nerve to check outside and eased out onto the small porch. There was no sign of anything, not even a sign of my panicked run down the gravel drive. But still, I knew I hadn't imagined that night. And when I turned to go back inside, there was all the proof that I needed. Hanging from the porch light was a skinned rabbit, just hanging there, right at eye level. There was no blood trail, not even a note, just that skinless rabbit. I ran inside just quick enough to grab my keys. I didn't even bother packing up anything else. I just grabbed my keys, threw the rental keys in the direction of the kitchen table, and got out of there as quick as I could. I drove away with just the outfit that was on my back. Later, I tried looking up anything about the quarry, but I couldn't find anything. I even asked around family and such that were still in the area, but no one seemed to know what I was talking about. But I know what I saw, and I know what happened to me. And whatever was in those woods, it wasn't just trying to scare me. It wanted to be seen. It wanted to be remembered. And I do remember every single night.
I want to be very clear about one thing up front. We weren't out there looking for anything scary. It was just a lazy Saturday. Me, my buddy Ryan, and our friend Jess. We finished our errands by that late afternoon and didn't feel like heading home yet. Ryan had this idea to go for a short hike. He suggested Huntley Meadows. He said Huntley Meadows was supposed to be peaceful this time of day, and we could catch some of the sunset. That park's in Fairfax County, not far from where I live. I've been there as a kid, but never that late in the day. We got there at around 5 p.m. I remember the exact time because Jess made a joke about us getting our steps in before the cryptids come out. We all laughed. The first part of the trail was fine. Open marshland, chirping birds, the occasional frog croak from the wetland. We saw maybe one older couple walking their dog. That was it. But the deeper we walked, the quieter it got. And I don't mean the normal quiet. I mean unnaturally quiet. Like the woods were holding their breath. No birds, no bugs. Even the wind seemed to stop moving through the trees. Jess was the first to say it out loud. Does it feel weirdly dead to you guys? Ryan brushed it off at first. It's just evening setting in. Animals go quiet when it's cold. But even he sounded unsure. We walked for maybe another 10 minutes until we noticed something off the path, maybe 20 feet away on the side of a thin oak tree. It looked like a long, vertical smear of red. Is that paint? Jess asked. No, Ryan muttered. It's blood. We got closer, and that's when the smell hit us, before the details did. Metallic, sharp, like pennies. Animal blood. They were tufts of fur caught on the bark, gray, white, clumped and darkened by moisture. A rabbit, by the look of it. The thing was propped up, like whatever killed it wanted us to see it. I felt the hair on my neck stand up. The blood was fresh. That's when we heard it. A twig snap somewhere behind us. We all turned. At first, nothing, just woods, shadows. Then, we saw movement. Something stepped out of the tree line. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dirty clothes, but what made my stomach drop was what he had on his head. A rabbit's pelt, not a mask, more like a hood that he was wearing on the top of his head. The pelt continued to drape down his back. Most disturbingly, it seemed like all the rabbit pelts were hand-sewn. His whole look was unsettling. But what was even more disturbing was what he had in his hand. A hatchet. It was chipped, and the blade was rusty. This certainly wasn't his first time using it. He took another step forward, and then he said, "You know what happens to trespassers?" He raised his hatchet slowly, not to throw, but to point. That's when the instinct kicked in. We bolted. None of us said a word, we just ran. I barely remember the path. Everything was a blur of branches, fading light, and my own panicked breath. I don't know if he chased us. I didn't look back, neither did Ryan or Jess. We jumped into Ryan's car. He fumbled the keys, cursed under his breath, finally started it. We peeled out of there as fast as we could. Everybody was reasonably freaked out. It was a silent car ride that night. When we got back, Jess informed me of a local legend in the area called the Bunny Man. Some say it was just a guy who lived out in the woods in the 70s, an escaped convict who dressed in animal skins and attacked people with an axe near the old bridge. But I don't care about the legends anymore. We saw him, we heard his voice. We haven't been back to Huntley Meadows since. And if we ever do, we'll carry more than a flashlight.